Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Conrad. Hey, oh, thank you. Wow, I love this warm applause, warm welcome. This is a nice respite from the outside right now, isn't it? Yeah, good choices. So today we're here for a recital, and today's program is called Old Country, New Age. It's kind of intriguing, isn't it? It's a very intriguing title, and it actually kind of confounded me for a bit because it's a little bit abstract. Old country, new age. I've already tainted how you think about old country, new age, have I not? Yes. I've tainted it in a way so that, just kind of eases into this afternoon with that nice purple glow of an AI-generated image. You guys know me, I love AI-generated images, but of a real photograph, and we'll get to that place in a bit. It's a real photograph of a place that we will go to, sort of spiritually speaking, through the music today. And I thought, to get at this old country, new age, I thought we would answer maybe 3 questions. And maybe they're rhetorical, maybe we'll get to answer them at the end. Let's find out together. And that is, when does one seek something new? And when does one seek something old, right? Because you have this contrast in this title, new and old, right? What does that mean? And then why would you seek something new, and why do you seek something old, right? Something is drawing you somewhere, whether it's new or old. And then last, which I hope will segue us into the recital, which is, how does one convey either old or new? And in this particular instance, this recital of how does one convey old country through music, through sound and through words, and how does one convey new age, similarly with sounds and words. And so yeah, this lecture is a little bit challenging, but I am going to throw in some fun music examples because there is a very fun piece in the second half. And so let's begin to explore. And you guys know me, I love a good painting, yeah? I love a good visual. I mean, not AI generated, a real one too. And I thought I would pick an artist from the period we're going to enter. And this artist, we're going to play a game, yeah? I'll give you a description of this artist, and then I think you'll be able to guess who I'm talking about. He's an American, but he was born abroad in Florence to expatriates of a very wealthy family. And he would spend his last few decades in England, where we're also going to be in England for almost the entire recital. And he spends his time there from the 1880s all the way to his passing in 1925. Anyone yet? Wow, you guys are so smart. I didn't even have to give you one more clue. I was going to be like, he's so known for his portraits and the madam. Wow, A+. Extra credit. All right, yes. John Singer Sargent, you got it, right? One of our, I'll just speak for myself. He really is one of my favorite painters from this period. And we are going to be in that late 19th century, well, really early 20th century, the Belle Epoque, the Gilded Age, okay? Since we're in England, we're not going to say the Gilded Age. We're not going to say the La Belle Epoque. We're not going to say fin de siècle. We're going to say the Edwardian era. We don't really use that word very much, partly because the Edwardian era was very short. It really only spanned from 1901 to sort of into the 19-teens, and partly because Edward VII, that's why it was called the Edwardian era, his reign was only 9 years, from 1901 to 1910. But we know a lot about this period, right? And just this painting alone, you're like, wow, yes, it's John Singer Sargent. Oh, look at her. Her name is Rosemary Ormond. She's the niece of John Singer Sargent. And okay, right now, I kind of want to be her. Sunday afternoon, La Jolla. Give me a nice velvet sofa. Let me just sink into it. Give me lots of satin and silk. And is that beige I see on her? She got the memo, didn't she? And there she is in repose. And this portrait is called Nonchalant. Truly, truly nonchalant. not a worry in the world. She looks maybe, I don't know, 20s, 30s. Not a worry in the world, right? 1911, this is the Edwardian era. Kind of like the height of it, really, at this point. What am I trying to depict for you here is the ostentatiousness of the Edwardian period. So if you want like a pop reference of sorts, I thought maybe I would also show like Downton Abbey. I don't know if anybody's a Downton Abbey fan, right? That's what we're talking about, right? You have multiple country houses, right? You have these motor cars, right? Yeah, it's very extravagant, right? That turn of the century, that old worldness, that high class extravagance really at its peak. And so this is the period at which I really want you to like have in your head as we enter into this program and start exploring what is happening here. All right. So with this now, let's place the three works into a musical timeline. This is another thing I love to do, just place everything on a timeline. And then hopefully we'll start to get at why this program is called Old Country, New Age. So the first work you're going to listen to, I'm giving it to you in chronological order that you will listen to, is by Ralph Vaughan Williams. The work is called On Wenlock Edge, and it was composed in 1908, sort of 1908 to 1909. And here you see his whole lifespan in front of you from 1872 to 1958. So we can deduce that he was about sort of in his mid-30s when he wrote On Wenlock Edge. And that's kind of important, okay? And this 08 to 09, what period are we in? A+. All right, second piece we're gonna listen to is by Edward Elgar, and it's his piano quintet. Now, the piano quintet was composed between sort of 1918 to 1919, so it is after the first work On Wenlock Edge, but you know, fairly close in time period, right? And Edward Elgar's lifespan is from 1857. Like I had to put an arrow because you know, I couldn't make the timeline too long, meaning that he's not quite a generation, but maybe like a generation or half a generation sort of before Vaughan Williams. And he leaves us in 1934. Right? And then you're going to have intermission, a little nice pause, get a little refreshment. You're going to return, and then we're going to listen to William Walton's Facade. Facade sort of had a lot of reworking in the beginning, and so it gets a little bit of a more space here, 1922 to 1929. And immediately you might see, oh, William Walton is much younger than the other two, right? In fact, a generation to almost 2 generations younger than Elgar and Vaughan Williams. And he composes his work rather young. He's, 20 at this point. And his lifespan goes to 1983, and it's off the charts. All right. So you look at this, and I don't give you another clue, which is maybe somewhat evident. And you can see, first of all, they're all from where? You guys are smart. They're all from England. They're all British, right? And you can see that they do overlap in their life time. But this lecture isn't about like their BFFs or anything. They're not. Okay. This lecture is about something else, right? It's about Old Country, New Age. So let's try to like get at what that title means. It really, the 3 works really only span a 14-year period. So it's like a tight little period if you think about it. But what do we know about 1908 to the 1920s? Yeah, you read my slides. Yes. I mean, it's a very, very significant event that happens, and that will taint how these composers think in terms of what is old, what is new. How do they perceive the past versus how do they perceive what is now and what is the future? And so this is an important event in which we will then consider sort of this is considered old. So when I showed you the John Singer Sargent, that is actually old. The Edwardian era is considered old, vis-a-vis World War I. And then Edward Elgar here, I forgot to say how old he is here. He's in his early 60s. So he's, really now reflecting back, right? It matters how old you are and what you're thinking about. And it's immediately after the end of the First World War. And so he's really now reminiscing about the Edwardian period, as well as the Victorian era, like with nostalgia, right? And so that piece itself will be more about old country again. And then the last piece on this program, which is really written now after the First World War, from a young William Walton, from a young composer who is collaborating with other young artists. And so his piece, Facade, will be more about New Age. And that's how we're going to kind of conceive of this program. Are you with me? Good, okay. And then, like, I have this small tick. I was like, oh, it's missing another important event. I mean, it kind of matters, but it kind of doesn't matter. So, just so that you know, right? Just so that you know it's there, okay. All right, so let's begin with the first piece. The first piece is, actually, sorry. I decided actually to work backwards. I decided to I changed my mind sort of this morning. I was like, instead of going in chronological order, let's go in backwards order and let's see how that flows. Because this piece is really fun and I wanted to surprise you. If you're not already going to know that you're going to be surprised with Facade. All right, William Walton. William Walton from 1902 to 1983. He was born in Oldham. Some of these English words I find a little bit hard to say. Lancashire, which is just north of Manchester. And he is from sort of a working class family, and his parents were actually also sort of amateur musicians. And he really didn't actually enjoy being in this sort of Manchester region. It was a bit provincial, and so he had the opportunity to attend the Christ Church Cathedral Choir School when he was younger on a scholarship. So he left home, he was in Oxford, and then from there he got another scholarship to attend Oxford University as sort of a chorister. Now, this is where things change. You get to Oxford, and then he failed multiple exams. Or not, for us. Maybe not. He fails multiple exams, which means that he can't go back to school. And then he doesn't want to go home either, because he doesn't want to go back to that area of industrial sort of area. So at this point, he somehow had already befriended one of the Sitwell siblings. And there are three siblings that you need to know. There's Edith, there's Osbert, and there's Sacheverell. I had to learn how to say that. It's a very, I was like, what kind of name is that? It's a French name, Sacheverell. And so you can see that he's closest in age to the youngest one, Sacheverell. And they become close friends. And when he was basically kind of kicked out of school, he didn't pass the exam, the Sitwells were like, oh, just come with us. We got plenty of space, because they're rich. And so, yeah, he does live with them. And so he moves in with the Sitwells. So let's find out who the Sitwells are. Oh yeah, the Gilded Age. Oh yes, the Belle Epoque. I mean, the Edwardian era, right? This might as well be a John Singer Sargent painting, right? This could really, it's not, but it might as well be. So you have the three kids, the siblings. The two brothers are very young, very cute, playing with the little dog here. And Edith here is a little older, and she's already looks like a teenager. And their parents, right? The parents look so regal, do they not? Very, because the father is Sir George Sidwell, the 4th Baronet, right? And the mom is Lady Ida Denison, daughter of William Denison, the 1st Earl of Londonsborough. That's a lot of class right there. Right? So they grew up with this Edwardian style, right? The brocades, the grandeur, all the excess of the Edwardian era. And then here, which is even, you have this photograph in which you have Edith, and I think this is Osbert, the older one, right, in front of this portrait, right, really demonstrating like lineage. And so maybe we expect the Sitwells to be sort of these very prim and proper Brits, right? But actually they're not. In particular, Edith, she was a bit of a rebel. And part of it is that when she looked back on the Edwardian period that she grew up, she didn't look back on it like the old age with fondness, not at all. Her father actually forced her, when she was a child, to wear a metal frame to correct her spine. And so she really didn't enjoy that. And she really becomes a rebellious like later in life. And she's known to then write poetry that is so different, in which I'll attempt to recite a little bit of it for you. And this really, their poetry becomes so unique and so interesting. And her brothers are in on it too. They're like, yes, let's sort of, not look back into the Edwardian era with nostalgia. Let's really critique what is happening. And in fact, they really despise that Edwardian era sort of way of life, and they even despise sort of the English Philistines. They call them sort of like, that class has become too comfortable, too conventional, too middlebrow, this sort of English bourgeoisie. And so they created their own language, and that is Edith creates her own way of speaking and of poetry. And that poetry forms the basis of Facade. And so the brothers were like, look, William, you got nowhere to go. We got this sister who's just like mad, crazy, and creative. We need a composer. You're a composer. Come, live with us for free and help us create this new work. Help create, like, just basically, orchestrate, set to music, her poetry. And that's Facade. And that's what you're going to listen to. And this is really an example of New Age, because we're looking at 1918. That's when Edith starts writing and actually first publishes the poem. And then they begin setting it to music. And Edith really tells him, that is William Walton, like, I need it to be a very particular way. And it's a really interesting sort of rhythmic structure. And in fact, I'm going to sort of like do a little bit of for you. And it's going to actually reminds me of like modern rap, right? Like spoken poetry. And there's spoken poetry in almost every single culture and has that rhythmic aspect to it. In addition, they're really fun. I think I would have loved to also like just stay with them for a bit. And not only was it just spoken poetry, she decided that you had to speak it through this megaphone, and that's what this guy is holding. So we have Osbert, the older of the brother, we have Edith, we have Secheville, we have William Walton, and then we have that's Neil Porter. He's a stage and screen actor from that period, and he worked with the Old Vic quite a lot. And he's holding this megaphone. Sorry, that's what I was trying to get at, right? It's not the orange cone that's outside. It looks like it. And it literally is a megaphone. And for their first performance, which they did at home in 1922, they decided to create a curtain. And then and then they paint it sort of like a face, and that's where the megaphone is. And then she would just like shout it through the megaphone, right? So this is truly New Age. This is like, I would just want to break away from that Edwardian period. I want to create something totally, totally new. All right. People have compared this work to Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire, right? So that sort of spoken, right? Spoken poetry and sort of singing, speaking, or Satie's Parade. There's sort of like, eclecticism with a typewriter and a this and a that. And also Stravinsky's L'Histoire, because it is a chamber music work. So this is like in that experimental phase, right, of New Age. And I thought I would capture a little bit of the first sung piece for you from Facade. It's called Hornpipe. Does anybody know what a hornpipe is? Yeah, I had to look it up too. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yes, it is a dance. Yeah, it's a sailor's dance. It's a sailor dance, exactly. And it's sort of it looks like a pipe and it looks like a horn. And it is Sailor, and I'm going to sing a little ditty, and you're going to recognize it. Ready? Popeye the Sailor Man. Right? That's how we know it from the 1920s. Exactly. And I didn't just make that up. That's in the score. So when you hear the hornpipe piece, they're really having fun with this like new age, right? And this idea is that they're just sort of mocking what is pageantry, right? Because the sailors come and it's like, oh yes, But really the sailors are having a lot of fun. All right, so the text here may or may not make sense to you. I'm going to attempt this. This is not easy, guys. Okay, I'm going to try to. There's no notes. I mean, there's notes as a rhythmic dictation kind of. There's no actual pitches to what you're going to hear. Sailors come to the drum out of Babylon. Hoppy horses foam, the dumb sky rhinoceros glum. Watch the courses of the breakers, rocking horses with the glouches, Lady Venus on the settee of the horse's seat. Where Lord Tennyson in Laurel rode a Gloria free, in a borealic iceberg came Victoria. She knew Princess Albert's tall memorial took the color of the floreal and the borealic iceberg floating on they see. And it just keeps going and going. That's all I could do. But that took a lot. But that's sort of the gesture, right? That's the rhythmic pattern, right? So it does sound like rap, does it not? Right? Yes. And so what is she getting at here? She's just mocking everything that's in power, right? She's mocking Tennyson, Britain's poet laureate. She's mocking Queen Victoria, Prince Albert. She names everybody. She's the emperor from Zanzibar, right? And she's dumping literally entire Victorian and imperial imagination into like one breathless verse. It just kind of goes. And so I really hope you have fun with this piece, because that's what it is. And there's going to be sort of little ditties here and there. There's like a yodeling kind of thing going on. There's a tarantella, which is about a spider dance, right? So you'll hear that compound rhythm, the da 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 da. There's a polka. So this is really a fun piece. Once again, and this is your example of new age. All right, so we're going to work backwards now, right? So now we had a lot of fun. Working backwards in chronological when the compositions were completed, as well as how you're going to hear them. Right before the intermission is Sir Edward Elgar's piano quintet in A minor. Now, Sir Edward Elgar was also born in England, as we had commented earlier, near Worcester, which is southwest of Birmingham. And he's actually kind of self-taught. And for 2 decades, he actually was sort of not really well known. For many decades, he was not very well known until 1899, the Enigma Variations. And when that came out, he was an instant overnight success story, and this was in his 40s. And then from there on, he was very much in demand. And I think almost everybody here has heard Pomp and Circumstance, right, at graduation. Da 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 dee dee dum, da 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 dee. Oh, I like this. Bravo! Wow! Everyone's been to graduation lately, it seems like. Okay, so he is literally just like so well known in, guess what period? The Edwardian period, and he's even knighted. I mean, imagine that, right? To be knighted by King Edward VII during the Edwardian period. So that must have been like the height in terms of career and success of his life. And so he was even considered the composer laureate of the Edwardian age. But the work we're going to listen to comes right after, right at the end of World War I. And not only is he sort of confronting like the aftermath of the World War, he's also faced with his wife, Alice, declining health. And she had been sort of in poor health for a while at this point. And she does pass away in 1920. And so this is a very difficult time for him. And I think we know now, given her symptoms, she probably had lung cancer. And so this is a very difficult period when he composed the piano quintet. And he's looking back in the old world, the old country, really with this nostalgia, but with like a tinge of sorrow, right? A tinge of solemnness. And so I thought I would play for you the opening of this piano quintet. And you're going to hear the whole thing, and so you'll probably hear a lot of Brahmsian harmonies and the Brahmsian sort of formal structure with the 3 movements and the sonata form structure. And once again, with this hint of sort of like sorrow and solemn and elegy in it. So this is the opening, which is actually like a very, and it's marked serioso. It's a very quiet opening, yeah. I mean, I am only playing the piano part, but the violins and the strings and the string quartet doesn't play very much either. But that's the mood that we enter this piano quintet. All right, and yet, it does have its sort of like majesty as well, right? So this is the Brahmsian part. I'm going to play a little bit for you too, so you can think of that as the introduction, and then the allegro just immediately following as the beginning of that first movement. Powerful opening. But you get that Brahmsian harmony already immediately. And so that's the piece that that I want you to think in terms of really sort of old country as something nostalgic and reminiscing. All right. And so then that leaves to the very first piece on the program now. And that first piece is by Ralph Vaughan Williams. Vaughan Williams is from Gloucestershire. So hard to pronounce English towns. It's from a town near Bristol. How's that? It's from a town near Bristol. The most important, I think, biographical fact that we need to keep in mind today is he's a collector of folk songs. Yeah, he collected more than, I think, 800 songs, right? So just immediately, it's already a very nostalgic thing, right? To collect folk songs, right? This idea of the old country. You're collecting something from the past, right? And you're maybe incorporating it into your musical idiom somehow. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind, if you can, is in 1908, just before he composes the work we're going to listen to, he studies with Ravel very briefly in Paris, which means that he's going to have this influences of sort of impressionism, and you'll hear that almost immediately. And he comes back from Paris, and he really almost immediately starts working on this piece that you're going to listen to that opens the program called On Wenlock Edge. What is that? Okay. So to understand what is On Wenlock Edge, we got to understand the poem that is based on. So the poetry, it's a song. It's a set of songs. The poetry it's based on comes from Alfred Edward Houseman, also known as A.E. Houseman's book of poems. And that book of poems is called A Shropshire Lad. Once again, hard words for me. Shropshire. Shropshire is a real place. That's the place. And that's the image from the beginning, if you remember the AI. So that's the image that I used for, and then I asked AI, I was like, can you make it like John Singer Sargent? And it did. So this set of 63 poems were published in 1890s. And Houseman is really interesting. He actually had never really been in Shropshire. I guess he had heard about Shropshire, he had heard a lot about it, and so he invents this sort of semi-mythical place, even though it is a real place. And he writes this set of poems, very lengthy, 63 poems, and they became incredibly popular sort of during that Edwardian period and also during World War I. And that has to do with the contents of these poems. And the content of these poems really is about this lad, a person, who is sort of from Shropshire, and he's sort of, it's very nostalgic. He's reminiscing, like, what is this old country? Once again, this old country. And sort of with an elegy, too. It's not like, oh, the pastoral, so beautiful. It's kind of like, oh, we've kind of lost a lot, actually. It's already sort of has that hint of elegy already in the 1908, even though it's not yet World War I. And now, Vaughan Williams takes only 6 of these poems and sets them to music. And the 6 poems are, as noted above, On Wenlock Edge, From Far, From Evening and Morning, Is My Team Plowing, Oh, When I Was in Love with You, Bredon Hill, and Clune. All right. On Wenlock Edge. Wenlock Edge is also a real place in Shropshire, and it's an edge because it's basically like a limestone cliff there. And so I thought we would read the first poem together, On Wenlock Edge. On Wenlock Edge, the wood's in trouble, his forest flees, the Wrenkin heaves. The gale, it plies the sapling double, and thick on Severn snow the leaves. 'Twould blow like this through Holt and Hanger, when Uricon the city stood. 'Tis the old wind in the old anger, but then it threshed another wood. Then 'twas before my time the Roman at yonder heaving hill would stare, the blood that warms an English yeoman, the thoughts that hurt him, they were there. There, like the wind through woods in riot, through him the gale, the life blew high. The tree of man was never quiet. Then 'twas the Roman, now 'tis I. The gale, it plies the sapling double. It blows so hard, 'twill soon be gone. Today, the Roman and his trouble are ashes under Uricon. All right, try to make sense of that. What's going on is that even through the 2,000 years of history, so he's referring back to the Roman era, and the town it was used to be called Uricon, has witnessed so much, right? And here's a man, a Shropshire lad from the 1900s, thinking back in terms of all the things that has happened and all the various losses. Each poem is actually a lot about loss that happens. And so in a way, it's sort of like old country lost, right? And in a way, it also is kind of foreshadows this, like, what is going to happen. That is World War I. And so you can hear the woods in trouble literally in the music that Vaughan Williams sets. And I'm going to play that for you. And so it's a haunted landscape. It's a wounded pastoral. The influence of Ravel, no? In all of that, right? And so we really get sort of like, just caught into where we're supposed to be, and that's how the whole recital opens. We just land in England. You're sort of like caught in this air and it land in England. I'm going to play a little bit of the end only because I really like the way that it's, actually, no, it's okay. I'm not going to do that. All right, So what I want to do now is try to wrap this all up. Like I said, it's kind of a more theoretical and sort of like a heady title, right? What is old country? What is new age? And I thought I would conclude with something, our timeline again, to situate ourselves so that when you go inside the recital hall, you really have a sense of what is where and when and how. And so once again, the three works, even though they are composed only 14 years apart, they're really determined by the world event that splits between the second, like the first and the second, or the second and the third pieces, right? And so you really have to think in terms of the On One Lock Edge as looking back. And definitely Edward Elgar's piano quintet is looking back at old country. And then after World War I, with the advent of sort of this idea that they need to create something new. And with this new generation, with Walton and the Sitwells, they create this new language and a new perspective of where they are with this work called Facade in the 1920s. And so that really sort of captures, I think, what the title of this program is, and that is Old Country, New Age. And then I thought I'd leave you with 3 more paintings by John Singer Sargent. And they are all by Singer Sargent. These are not AI generated. So you have the Edwardian one that I showed you. And this is from when he was actually in residence in England, and he actually did paint quite a bit of landscape in his early times in the 1880s. So this really shows that sort of Victorian era sentiment. And then you may or may not know this work, right? That was commissioned by the British government at the end of the First World War, when and John Singer Sargent actually did visit the troops as well. And there's a photograph of that captures the same thing, which is that so the soldiers were all wounded by mustard gas, and they were all blinded. And he sort of captures this in this huge painting that is now in a memorial in England. And so with that, I hope you enjoy the concert.